Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A local school district faces a multi-million-dollar negligence verdict in connection with a coach convicted of a sex crime involving a student. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. A San Diego jury found the Coronado Unified School District was negligent in hiring the coach, who admitted to having a sexual relationship with one of his underage players. KPBS education reporter MG Perez has more from our newsroom on the unusual civil suit judgment.
Parents of the 17-year-old student known as Jane Doe, to protect her identity, filed their lawsuit claiming Coronado Unified was negligent in hiring and not properly supervising Jordan Tyler Bucklew. Bucklew was an assistant girls basketball coach at Coronado High School in January 2020. That's when some players on the team reported to a teacher that he was involved in a sexual relationship with their teammate. Bucklew was arrested and later pled guilty to a felony count of unlawful sex with a minor. He was fired and received 3 years probation. He was not required to register as a sex offender unless he violated probation, which he did not. The girl's parents were not satisfied with that outcome and filed the civil suit. The jury has awarded the victim $5 million in damages. Her father agreed to talk with us if he was not identified in any way, again to protect his daughter. We spoke with him late this afternoon on Zoom.
They've dragged my daughter and our entire family through the mud, trying to either push this thing under the carpet or get out of any sort of accountability associated with, the sexual assault of my daughter by a Coronado High School coach. This wasn't her fault. I mean, she was groomed, she was manipulated, she was not protected by a system that we all are supposed to trust, and that's the school.
In a written statement, Maria Simon, Public Information Officer for Coronado Unified, said this: Coronado Unified School District values every child in our care. The safety and well-being of students is our top priority. CUSD leadership and legal counsel are currently considering post-trial options and as such decline to provide further comment about the verdict at this time. The school board will meet in private session on Thursday to discuss what they will do next. The district's lead attorney, Randall Wynette, would not be interviewed on camera, but he did tell me in a phone conversation the jury's $5 million judgment is, quote, highly unusual. And in his words, they got it wrong, holding the district responsible instead of the perpetrator, Jordan Tyler Bucklew. Maya?
And MG, what happened to Bucklew? Do we know where he is right now?
According to the victim's family attorney, Bucklew moved out of state after completing his probation. They were unable to serve him for the civil suit, but the attorney said it's the school district that was negligent, and the jury agreed. In the newsroom, MG Perez, KPBS News.
Well, looking ahead tonight, we're dropping down to a low of 57, and those clouds are going to hang on. And I'm not even going to rule out some low-level cloud cover. So if you are going to be out late or even early the next day, make sure you're just taking it easy on the roads. You may run into some lower visibility. Now, we are tracking gusty winds, especially as they ramp up on Thursday. We'll tell you what areas are expected to be hit the hardest coming up.
More money is on the way to families impacted by January's floods. County supervisors voted unanimously today to provide additional aid for flood victims. It includes $6.6 million to continue paying for hotel vouchers and $3 million to provide 3 meals a day for 60 days. Anna Ramirez is one of dozens of flood victims who were at today's meeting, and she says she would be forced to return back to her damaged home if not for the funding.
I wouldn't want them inside the house. Whenever I go to the house, I just keep them in my car, but thinking of them going inside the house, I just can't. It's still, you just go in there and it smells like mold.
More than 2,200 people have participated in the temporary lodging program, but the county says more people continue to apply every day. Supervisors also voted to continue the local emergency declaration and approved a property tax relief ordinance first suggested by Shane Harris. Well, last week, the Pentagon lifted its 3-month grounding of the V-22 Osprey, but it will likely be months before they return to full mission status. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer has more.
March 2022, 4 Marines in Norway. June 2022, 5 Camp Pendleton Marines in Imperial County. August last year, 3 Marines in Australia. And in November, 8 airmen off the Japanese coast. In under 2 years, 20 service members have been killed in 4 V-22 Osprey crashes. They were grounded after the crash in Japan. On Friday, Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder announced they're ready to fly again.
The decision followed a meticulous and data-driven approach, prioritizing the safety of our air crews. It was accomplished in close coordination with the U.S. Air Force-led investigation, which identified the material failure that led to the mishap.
The Osprey is a tilt-rotor aircraft that can take off and land like a helicopter, but by rotating its engines, fly like a plane. They're used to carry cargo and personnel. And San Diego Naval Air Forces Command says the Navy will prioritize safety in its approach to bringing the Osprey back to flight status. The service says maintenance and procedural changes will address that material failure. The Navy says the process will take time. Its most experienced pilots and instructor pilots will be the first to fly, and only during the day, then co-pilots. At the Pentagon, Ryder offered condolences to the families of those killed in Ospreys.
And our nation's service members and their families make extraordinary sacrifices to safeguard our freedom and our security, and in return we owe them an unwavering commitment to their safety and well-being.
The aircraft had a long and difficult development period with several fatal crashes. An investigation found the 2022 Imperial County crash was caused by a so-called hard clutch engagement, a recurring problem with Ospreys. The cause of November's crash near Japan remains under investigation. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
National City is planning to consider its own ban on homeless encampments. South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki says the decision comes as many cities are taking a harsher stance on homelessness.
Several officials say the city council has asked staff to explore a possible encampment ban, similar to the controversial ban that San Diego passed last year. That law made it illegal for people to sleep and set up tents on the street if there was room in the city's homeless shelters. Officials say National City's move is partially because more unhoused people are being pushed into the city from San Diego. Some homelessness researchers and advocates say they're not surprised by the decision.
All cities in San Diego County, that they're all at certain different levels exploring these camping bans.
Rosie Vasquez is the founder of Community Through Hope, which has been one of the South Bay's largest homelessness providers.
I do hope and have vocalized that each city really look to its own issue and at least try and design its own unique policies and not adopt these large-scale city policies that would virtually make it impossible for someone to lay their head somewhere at night.
It's still not clear how effective these bans are at actually reducing homelessness. And Vasquez and many other advocates say they're overly cruel to unhoused people. A ban in National City would have to be approved by the city council. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
San Diego and National City have been selected for a state grant to help reconnect communities that were divided by freeways. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more on what that means.
Starting in the 1950s, the state and federal governments collaborated to build San Diego's network of freeways. The infrastructure devastated many low-income communities of color who were left with depressed property values, pollution, noise, and division. The state's Reconnecting Communities program is meant to help heal those wounds. Caltrans director Tony Tavares says the grant funds could be used for affordable housing, parks, and sustainable transportation infrastructure.
And ultimately, Ultimately, the program will help restore a sense of connectivity. Connectivity that was lost during a time when transportation leaders in the past weren't effectively engaging and communicating and collaborating with community members and local officials.
National City and Southeast San Diego very much needs a win right now.
Janice Luna Reynoso is executive director of Mundo Gardens, a nonprofit that will help determine exactly how the funds will be spent. She said the recent catastrophic flooding in Southeast San Diego and National City was a direct result of the government's failure to invest in infrastructure. And she said correcting those wrongs will take a generation.
I look at my granddaughter that, hopefully she'll benefit, and it'll be a legacy of healing, of economic justice, of vitality, of legacy of what we're going to do to leave this place better than we found it.
Caltrans has not yet said how much money the region will get in grant funds, but the state funding could help San Diego compete for grants from the federal Reconnecting Communities program that was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law passed in 2021. In a separate but related announcement Tuesday, Barrio Logan is set to receive $1.3 million in congressional earmarks to study putting a lid over Interstate 5. That freeway helped make Barrio Logan one of the most polluted communities in the country. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
And for more on the history of how freeways divided communities in San Diego, you can listen to KPBS's award-winning podcast, Freeway Exit. You can find it on all major streaming platforms and at kpbs.org.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, Amna Navaz reports from the U.S.-Mexico border, where migrant arrivals are straining resources and dividing communities. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Boeing is once again in the spotlight after dozens of people were injured during a flight from Australia to New Zealand. And as Ivan Rodriguez reports, that's not the only recent incident with a Boeing aircraft.
Terrifying scenes during a LATAM Airlines flight on a Boeing 787 Dreamliner from Sydney, Australia to New Zealand.
It felt like, when you are in a roller coaster and you just go like this, that sensation. And then everything flew up, went down, and it was like very shocking.
Approximately 50 people were treated for injuries on arrival in Auckland. 12 patients were sent to the hospital. LATAM Airlines says the flight experienced a technical event resulting in a strong movement, but did not elaborate.
There was a 2.5-year-old sleeping on the seat next to us on the other side. He went up in the air and landed on the ground.
Then, just 2 hours into a United Airlines flight from Sydney to San Francisco, a different type of Boeing aircraft had to turn back after experiencing a maintenance issue in the 5th emergency for the carrier over the last 7 days. First responders were seen assessing the tire area of the aircraft once it landed. Both incidents come as the Federal Aviation Administration says an audit of Boeing's production of the 737 jet uncovered a number of issues. The audit was triggered by a door panel blowout during an Alaska Airlines flight in January. The FAA has given Boeing until late May to come up with a plan to fix the issues identified in the audit and other reviews. In a statement, the company says in part, "We continue to implement immediate changes and develop a comprehensive action plan to strengthen safety and quality." Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
And amid new problems with Boeing 737 MAX, an update of Frontline's award-winning investigation with the New York Times into the troubled plane. You can watch Boeing's fatal flaw at 10 o'clock tonight right here on KPBS. As parents fret over whether teens are spending too much time on social media, a new survey indicates that some teens are putting limits on themselves and think parents should too. Here's Karen Kafa.
In the midst of discussions of the potential harm of social media use to teens' mental health, a survey from the Pew Research Center found some teens dialing back their use.
About 4 in 10 have cut back on their social media use, and about a third say that they've cut back on the time that they spend on their smartphone.
Monica Anderson, director of Internet and Technology Research for Pew, said teen girls, who other studies have indicated may face particular social media risks to mental health and body image, are also more likely than teen boys to set limits.
Girls are more likely than boys to say they spend too much time on either of these technologies, but they're also more likely than boys to say that they've taken steps to cut back on the time that they use on either social media or on their phone.
The survey also found teens mindful of their parents' screen time and how it impacts family interactions.
We asked teens to assess how often their parent was distracted when they're trying to have a conversation with them, and nearly half of teens said that this happens at least sometimes.
Still, many parents said it's a priority to keep tabs on their teen screen time, with both parents and teens equally likely to say they argue sometimes about when it's time for teens to put the phone down. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
And be sure to listen to the latest episode of KPBS Midday Edition for a one-on-one interview with San Diego's mayor. Todd Gloria joined host Jade Hindman in the KPBS studios this morning. And much of the discussion is driven by listener questions, and that includes lessons the city has learned from its response to the January 22nd weather disaster.
I'm in no way saying mission accomplished, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think, Jade, this is important work because this was driven in part by climate change. And so that means that I suspect that we'll be dealing with this on a go-forward basis. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from this experience. And my intention is to make sure that we learn those lessons and do our very best to never repeat them.
And you can hear the full interview on the KPBS Midday Edition podcast. It's available for streaming at kpbs.org and all major podcast platforms. For more than 50 years, the California Coastal Commission has been tasked with protecting the state's coastline from unchecked development. But critics say the commission is working against the state's housing and climate goals. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says there's a growing appetite for reform in the state legislature.
When the kids were really little, we would bike along here after it was safe and protected. And now with teenagers, they come and bike to the beach on their own.
I'm walking with State Senator Catherine Blakespear along Highway 101 in Encinitas. When Blakespear was mayor, she got the city to add protected bike lanes here.
It's really important that we be able to connect our communities.
As nice as the bike lanes are, Blakespear says they could have been better. She wanted to reduce the number of lanes on Highway 101 from 4 to 2. That would help cut back on speeding and make more space for pedestrians and cyclists. But taking street space away from cars requires a permit from the California Coastal Commission.
Means that it can be tens of thousands of dollars, it almost always is, and it's on an uncertain timeline, and it requires a big process. So hiring people, having meetings, doing studies that might be redundant, it's just not a great way to run a system. We also see tremendous backlogs at the Coastal Commission, months and years of time it takes to get through.
The lack of safe bike infrastructure near the coast isn't just bad for the climate. There's a human cost as well. Last October, a 41-year-old cyclist was struck by an SUV driver in Point Loma. The city had planned to install protected bike lanes on that road, but the plans collapsed under the Coastal Commission's permitting process. KPBS's reporting on the incident led Blakespear to introduce SB 689.
So what my bill does is it cuts all of that red tape, and it says that if the bike lane is consistent with all the other plans and programs that cities have, they're able to use what's called a de minimis process to install a bike lane. So the Coastal Commission would be able to approve a project without going through the big rigmarole that's currently required.
This is about making California available and accessible, including the coast, for people of all income levels.
State Assemblymember David Alvarez has a similar bill tackling the Coastal Commission's power to block housing.
When it comes to housing, metrics are very, very clear. The coastal areas of California are among the most expensive in the entire country. And that means that it is excluding individuals in California from different economic background levels from having access.
Alvarez's AB 2560 would fast-track approval of apartment and condo buildings in the coastal zone that use the state's Affordable Housing Density Bonus program. That program lets developers build more homes if they set aside a portion for low and middle-income households at affordable price points. The bill would not apply in the state's undeveloped coastal areas.
We're not talking about places that are not appropriately zoned for housing. We are only talking about allowing more units to be built for low-income individuals and middle-income individuals on sites that already are going to be building housing to begin with.
The Coastal Commission declined KPBS's interview request. Officially, it has no position on Alvarez's bill, though it has opposed similar reforms in the past. Alvarez says the commission means well, but that it values upholding bureaucracy over producing good outcomes.
I think you're seeing a response from the legislature. It's not just Senator Blakespeare and myself who are San Diegans. It's members actually up and down the state who are saying, we need to look at this issue of coastal access in a way that really represents access for everybody and not just as a tool that sometimes different parties use in order to stop progress on specific projects, which is often what happens.
There's really a perception right now that the Coastal Commission is stopping us from being able to handle and address urgent problems.
Blakespeare's bill does have support from the Coastal Commission, but the senator admits she limited the bill's scope to avoid their opposition. Both bills are going through committee hearings and have to pass the full legislature by the end of August. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines. We need to break down what's on tap here throughout the rest of the week. And while it is going to be windy, lighter winds in store as we head into Wednesday. So we'll catch a little bit of a break, but then we're going to change to a northeasterly flow, and we're going to start to ramp up those Santa Ana winds. And some of these winds could be damaging as well. We are tracking a late week chance for showers, the highest chance being in the mountains. Now for tonight, again, we're forecasting lows in the 50s, Oceanside 53. Those thick clouds hang on. Similar story in San Diego. Meanwhile, further inland, we're at 49 tonight in Ramona, 52 in Borrego Springs, and 39 in Mount Laguna. Now, as we head into the day tomorrow, we'll see some sunshine, and while highs not doing too shabby there along the coast in the 60s, Borrego Springs 78, even flirting with 80 there, and flirting with 50 in Mount Laguna. But like I said, more active weather, especially on the day on Thursday, as those winds turn to a northeasterly flow. That's going to ramp up those Santa Ana winds, especially again with that wind direction. And for the mountainous terrain and even through the deserts, we're going to expect some very gusty winds. But the story is going to be windy here across the county. Localized wind damage here, elevated fire threat, and dangerous crosswinds for motorists. So all nasty business. Make sure that you are staying weather aware. Gusts between 50 to 70 miles per hour. And with that, we even have a few high wind watches in effect that include Riverside, San Bernardino counties, and even closer towards Orange County as well, where we are expecting those winds to really start to pick up late Wednesday through Thursday afternoon. Let's break this down for you with your 5-day outlook. Here along the coast, we're actually going to see a warm up for Thursday, 72, but like I said, it's going to be quite windy, and I'm not going to rule out a few showers, especially later on this week on Friday. Dropping down to 68, but we're back up to the 70s there for the weekend with mostly sunny skies. Meanwhile, further inland, similar story there. We're going to be tracking a few showers and, of course, breezy conditions as we head into the late week, but then we're back up to the 70s and even 75 there by Sunday. For the mountains, very, very windy. I'm not going to rule out even a flurry or two with those showers sticking around even through Friday. Highs are going to be dropping down to the mid 30, so a big change there for where we are on Wednesday with a high of 48. We're staying in the 30s through Saturday, rising back up to 41 by Sunday. As for the deserts, well, we are going to drop about 10 degrees from Wednesday into Thursday. And like I said, it's going to be quite windy and a little cooler with those showers even sticking around in the deserts for Friday. Saturday, Sunday, well, we are going to start to rise again, flirting back up to 80 by Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
A running club by and for women of color has taken off in South San Diego. More than 500 people have run with the Santa Mujeres since it began in 2020. KPBS reporter Katie Heisen joined them on a Saturday run through Barrio Logan to see the impact.
We didn't see Black and brown people in the running spaces.
Virginia Camacho and her friend Priscilla Rojas were looking for a running club accessible to everyone. All colors, shapes, and sizes. Free.
We wanted a place that we know that our family and our friends would feel comfortable coming to without judgment.
When they didn't find it, they created it. Rojas says Santa Mujeres offers not just comfort, but safety.
Every woman in our run club has experienced something, like either being honked at, harassed, followed, like all of us. So I think having this community has made it safer for us to go out and run.
She says the representation has changed the course of many who tell her,
I wouldn't have started running if I didn't see someone that looked like me, had the same energy as me. Like, you can just show up as who you are.
Including Elspeth Ruiz.
I came and I introduced myself as my name is Elspeth and I'm not a runner. And I've been coming ever since. I haven't stopped.
This past year, Ruiz says she ran 24 races.
Now I have a wall full of medals and hats and glasses, and I look like a pro, but I'm not. But it looks good.
Santa Mujeres is eyeing a new finish line, nonprofit status. Katie Heisen, KPBS News.
And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Once home to a cabin owned by musician Frank Zappa, LA's Laurel Canyon is now a thriving hub for wildlife. On NPR's Morning Edition, how conservationists are hoping to buy the historic plot. And March is National Nutrition Month. KPBS Midday Edition is discussing how food can be viewed as medicine. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.